Welcome to episode 295 of the Filmmakers Podcast. This is a show where we talk filmmaking, from indie film to studio film to TV and everything in between. How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to F it up, in our very, very humble opinion. I am Tobias Feetz, I'm a screenwriter and director, and I'm the editor of the Filmmakers Podcast. And I'm here to tell you that this is part 2 of our Wolves of War special. If you haven't already, do check out part 1 as Charles chats with DOP Stuart Nicholas White and some of his cast, including Matt Willis, Jackson Booth, Anastasia Martin, and Rupert Graves. Today, he talks with his editor Neil Lenthall and composer Christopher Cook. But let's hear it from the man himself. Enjoy!
Let's go on to Neil Lenthall, brilliant editor. I've only ever worked with one editor on films that I've directed before, Ollie Parker, who I love. So working with Neil, I was like, oh, okay, how's this going to be working with a different editor? And it was a fantastic experience. Neil is a lovely guy, as you'll tell from this interview. He's wonderfully knowledgeable about editing, and he's always up for helping other people as well. He edited Confession, Lucinda Rhodes' film before that, which is how I got in touch with him in the first place. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my chat with editor Neil Lenthall. Hey Neil, how are you, man? It's so good to see you.
Oh yeah, you too.
Let's talk about Wolves of War, because I really enjoyed our collaboration on it. I really enjoyed working with you and finding the beats and seeing what worked and what didn't, and what we took out and what we didn't. And we kind of shot quite lean anyway. There wasn't much, we were shooting the story, and it's 4 guys really on a mission. They need to get from A to B to C to not death, to survive or not survive and get home. So how, when you first get a project, do you think, okay, how am I going to approach this, or how am I going to work with the director? What is it about projects that appeals to you, and how do you approach them, first of all, I suppose, and Wolves will use as the example?
I generally look for 4 things.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember exactly what those 4 things are. I mean, the script is...
4 things. I don't know what the 4 things are. This is just 4 things.
Last week was a 75-hour week, and this week's been slightly less. So, such as film and TV. So I managed to miss my stop today on the train.
Jesus, because you're so tired.
So the 4 things I look for, like, script is the first thing, like story, which is a bit of a vague sort of term. I don't kind of like to use that because it's kind of like, what do you mean by story? I think that's something that, like, for new people, and when people say, oh, an editor's a storyteller, okay, well, what do you mean by, like, if you don't know anything about editing, like, that doesn't really tell anything. So anyway, like, I look for, like, a script, like, what is it? Is it engaging? Are the characters interesting? Am I sucked into the world? Do I feel like it has potential? I think it's, you want to, I'm not a big fan of reading scripts, and that I feel like there's a lot of things that aren't in scripts that are the things that I'm really looking for. Like tone, performances obviously aren't in script, how it looks, like all those kind of things that when you get the rushes, a lot of the elements that you're looking at, tone and performance and the image and so on, in some scripts they're present in some sense, and, particularly well-written scripts. But in others, those things are kind of not there for obvious reasons. So I'm kind of looking at, like, the potential of the script. Like, is this an interesting story? Can this make something? The second thing is director.
Yeah. Like,
is the director, like, smart? Like, do they get it? Because I think, a lot of, you work with, like, directors of a whole range of experience, everything from people doing their first films to people who've been in the industry for 25 years and, all that kind of thing. And I think, like, when I talk to a director, like, my judgment, like, I'm trying to find out, like, are they smart and perceptive? Like, do they understand what they have to do as a job? Because, I mean, this maybe sounds bizarre, but like a lot of inexperienced directors haven't quite figured out, like, exactly where, like, what their responsibilities are, in the sense of, of not just the kind of practical day-to-day stuff, but in terms of, like, how do you get the sound and images that you need to tell a story in an interesting way. So I'm always like, what's the director like, and having a chat with them and trying to figure out, like, do they understand the language of cinema, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do they have a vision? Do they know what they want to make? Yeah. And that's and I think it's so important. You have to have that vision. You have to be able to explain it right, and you're looking for that. You're going, and if they don't, do you just go, well, I probably don't want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, you take jobs for different reasons. Some jobs you take for the money, some jobs you take for the credit, some jobs you take for the project and what you think the project is going to be like on as a process. And sometimes ideally you want at least two of those things. Sometimes you just do it for one. Occasionally you get a job that is great for your CV, puts money in the bank, and is like a fun ride. But it often feels a little bit like the good, fast, cheap triangle where you only get two. You can't get all three.
Yes.
And so I think it's vision, and it's can they execute that vision as well? Because I think like my job as an editor obviously is to help the director tell the story that they want to tell. And, and I'm like, as an editor, you're sort of you're trying to be a storytelling expert. You're trying to understand audiences and stories and structure and, all those kind of elements that you use and that you utilize. And you ideally want a director who understands those elements too. And that's not to say that, I keep coming across directors who I think are idiots and aren't deserving to work with me, but, but you do. I guess I was thinking about this the other day, actually. I was kind of, been working as an edit producer on this TV job, and, I kind of think like, basically, I guess the two things I'm looking for, really, not even four, the two things I'm looking for are like, is this person smart and perceptive, and is this person easy to work with? Because I think the older I get, the more, like, the less tolerance I have waiting for people who are difficult or awkward, or there's just a general personality clash. Because it's not about someone necessarily being difficult. Sometimes it's just you kind of don't mesh personality wise. And I do think one of the things that was most enjoyable about Wolves was, like working with a director who like is smart and perceptive, but is also quite sort of not easygoing in a negative sense, but easygoing in the sense of like, it's not, because you sometimes work with directors who, especially younger directors, who feel like, this film's it's got to be successful, otherwise that's my career. And I'm someone who works better in an environment where, I'm a kind of a carrot person rather than a stick person. I don't really appreciate, if someone starts shouting at me, I'll start shouting back. I don't really appreciate, someone who kind of brings a bad vibe to things. I don't feel like, personally I get my best work out of that kind of environment. So I do like to work with directors who are focused and professional and so on, but who are kind of easygoing and easy to work with, and and understand like what everyone's trying to do, and everyone's pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, which is great. What I really like about that is you talked about me in the third person as if I wasn't here, and I really like that. It's like, it's really nice. And what I liked about working on Wolves with a director who was intelligent perspective. So I think you said intelligent. You probably didn't, but I'm going with that.
I did say intelligent perspective. I mean, maybe not specifically in terms of the director of Wolves, but I did say that I do like working with. We can put you in. We can put you in that category. That's fine.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, okay, so with Wolves, let's talk about the process of what you do when you get rushes through. You make a rough assembly. Let's talk about Wolves as a perfect example, Wolves of War. What did you do with all those amazing rushes you got through? Intelligently made.
And there's a very perceptive, smart director on that project. Yeah.
That director's head will be massive right now.
Yeah, I know. Man, he's already got a big enough head, isn't he? Wolves was slightly unusual, actually, because I didn't come on board until... Actually, I think I came on board, like, you guys were just finishing shooting.
Serious? Was it?
Yeah, so I didn't get anything until after you'd...
Wow, I don't remember that.
Until after you'd wrapped. So usually you get, you start getting rushes through by the day, and you're trying to basically get through a day's rushes in a day, roughing out scenes. On that one, it was slightly different. And that, I just got everything together. I started going through day by day, and then realized actually I might as well just do it chronologically. So I mean, the first stage in terms of actually having rushes is to watch stuff because what you're trying to basically get to the point where you have a script. Some people call it a rough cut, some people call it an assembly, some people call it an editor's cut.
Yeah,
I prefer the term script cut just because that's kind of, I feel like that's what it is, that it's basically the script up on screen. I'm not moving scenes around, I'm not dropping lines of dialogue. All I'm trying to do is kind of make sure I have all the story beats, and then make sure I have like the script up on screen, because everyone's been working on this thing for months and maybe years, and everyone's been following it as a blueprint. And so the first thing I think you need to do really is just to see that up on screen so you can see what isn't working.
Yeah.
Directors hate assemblies because it's never the film that they want to see. Nope. Editors hate assemblies because it's always a scramble to get it done. So that's why I don't like calling it an editor's cut, because it always feels like you rarely do get a proper editor's cut, like a version in which you've kind of said, oh, here's my ideas. Sometimes you do get an opportunity to go, I usually say to a director, quite often, like, I've done a few things, or there's a few things I've tried, so there's some surprises in there. But yeah, in terms of the assembly, you're basically trying to get all the beats in there, because the director and the producers especially want to see, do we have everything?
Do we have a movie?
Yeah, do we have a movie?
What do we need to reshoot if we had to? Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they want to see, do we have all the bits? Do we have all the pieces?
Have I wasted my money on this? Yeah.
Yeah, that's my sort of responsibility to the producer. My responsibility to the kind of director is to show what, it's always going to be an interpretation, and I'm always going to make choices the director is surprised by or disagrees with or whatever, but I'm trying to, I basically, in my kind of reading of the script and chats with the director, trying to figure out the film that's in their head. And so the assembly is a kind of a bit of a weird one, and it's a rushed mix of an interpretation of the director's thoughts, an interpretation of my thoughts, a version and a representation of the script. So I think that's part of the reason why it ends up as a bit of a mess in assemblies, to be honest. I think actually the assembly on Wolves was surprisingly good. I remember sitting and watching it, not surprisingly that I didn't expect specifically to be good, but surprising in that you watch assemblies and you're like, there's a lot of work to do. Yeah. But when I watched that, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but also like the story's there, like it's all there and it's all in the right place. I think we did very, very little rearranging of stuff, if anything.
Yeah, I think we did do, because I remember there's a slight continuity which wonderfully no one's ever noticed, because the scene was supposed to be later on in the film, and he's giving his jacket away at that point to one of the other characters. So that's the only thing we noticed, because we wanted to tell certain scene was quite long, we wanted to split it up and stuff. And when one character dies, we were very aware of, okay, how do we tell this without, as a whole exposition bit, can we put bits in between? So that was the only bit we really moved around that death scene. And it's true, I remember seeing that assembly going, might be the best assembly I've ever seen. You're like, okay, that's really strong. Of course there was a load of work to do. Of course there's stuff that you're just going, that's horrible and that doesn't work, and why did I shoot that, or why is that shot in there? All that kind of stuff you do. But that's the point, isn't it? That's when you start to play with. For me, that's the best time, because now you're just trying to make it better, constantly chipping away at it to go, okay, how can we make that better, funnier, sharper, more dramatic, more thrilling? And you just keep honing. You keep honing, don't you? Right? What's your process like during that time, and what do you like to do? What's the things you've learned over the time that really help?
I think like the edit moves through phases which you kind of have to approach differently. I think, it's like some editors really dislike certain stages or really like certain stages. Like a lot of editors hate assemblies. Despite the flaw of the kind of step of making an assembly, I do actually quite like, you have the script for the scene and you get the rushes and you're like, ooh, what am I going to get in this? And it's just kind of you sat there on your own with like the rushes, just like build a scene, so I really enjoy that. And then once you get into the sort of the director's cut, then you are shaping it more towards, I guess there's two things. It's kind of, you're shaping it towards what the director wants, but you're also trying to solve problems. And I kind of feel like the director's cut is those two things, like let's really, I've had a stab at it in the assembly, let's really have put together a version of the film that the director, wants, hence the name director's cut. Problem solving, really you're looking for what are the big problems, what are the big story problems, whether it's structure, whether it's performance, whether it's like things that just don't make sense, like pacing and things like that, you kind of worry about later on. But I always feel like the director's cut is about, and often quite early on, you'll kind of start like experimenting a little bit with kind of moving stuff around. I try not to like lose scenes too early. I think you have to, even though there's always scenes that you look at and you think, rarely, to be honest, I think most of the time when you look at a scene and saying, I'm not sure this is gonna, like, we need this scene, like, rarely does it actually end up staying in the film. But I think you need to kind of work a scene and let it live in the film for a bit before you decide to kind of kill it. But yeah, that's the kind of stage where you do start to experiment with, like, I've done stuff. I mean, I did a feature a few years ago where the director and I watched the assembly separately, and like we were both like, okay, we have a big problem with like the shape, and we both were like, okay, this is like this. We both saw the same problem, and and it was kind of like we had two kind of big events, and one was kind of too early, and it meant that like the second act was just so long, and your kind of typical kind of baggy second act problem, and so we kind of like the first thing we did basically was like move a load of scenes before this kind of big set piece. We kind of like moved all our kind of character scenes from the middle of the film to early on, and then which meant that we kind of then spent the first part of the film getting all the characters, and then once this big set piece happened, then we kind of were more into story about building towards the end, and you often do kind of stuff like that where like on the page, you read on the page and it's like, oh, this works, this is fine, and then you see it on screen and suddenly you're like, no, this is like, this is, you just see it immediately, this is wrong, this is,
Yeah, and I think that's really great for screenwriters as well. If you get a chance to go in the edit and see your work and why your stuff gets cut out, or why you should have cut that out in the script stage. But it's sometimes you don't know, like you say, on page it reads brilliantly or it works with the arcs of the stories, but you get in the edit and you're like, nah, don't need it, you're repeating something you've said before. It's just get to the point. No one cares. We've got the characters, we've got the essence, and you've got to make really with an indie film a 90-minute movie. You can't take the piss. People just you can't deliver a 100-minute movie and you might not sell it. It's very difficult, and often, like say, I think the script cut, like you said, that we can't remember how long that was, but maybe 2 hours, I don't know, what I mean? It's like, it's long. Maybe it wasn't too long, but anyway, you end up, like say, going down, and if there's a way to save that time in the script stage, you've actually got to do it. But in the edit, then you see these things and you go, that's not working, let's change that. And we did that a lot. There was just stuff we just hacked out just all the time. Nah, don't need it, move on. And you were great at that. You're very direct and very like, I don't think we need this just doesn't tell us anything new, or let's move forward, or how can we get to the next bit.
Apparently I don't have a poker face. I don't know whether it's just the personality of being a northerner or whatever, but I do kind of feel like, and I do try and I don't try and be like uncaring in how I deliver, but I think you do have to. And there's a whole topic in itself talking about like director-editor relationships. For an editor, that's the key relationship. It's they're the person we spend the most time with. They're the person whose kind of coattails we're trying to hang on to career-wise. And I think you do have to, like, ideally, you end up in a situation where you do have a close creative collaboration where you can be like honest about the material. And I think like the director, it's easier for an editor to be honest about the material because I didn't shoot it. I don't care how much money was spent on it. I don't care how difficult it was to get a particular shot. But I think that directors need to, and it does take time, and I understand that it takes time, but to kind of get over the shoot and get away from the shoot and kind of move away from what you wanted the film to be and what the film isn't becoming and all those kind of things, and to really be honest about what the material is and what the material can be. And I think you will have conversations in the edit like between the two. They won't go anywhere else. That won't you won't talk to the producers about these things, and you will ideally be able to properly interrogate the material and to really work it and see what it does. And sometimes a director will kind of persist with an idea, and you've got to let them persist with an idea and gently tell them that that's just like, we tried 6 different ways and the material isn't there, the shots aren't telling the audience the things that you want the audience to tell or whatever it is. But I do think it's important, as an editor, to focus on those relationships and to build trust with the director, because I think it's, for both parties, you want to have a collaborator who you can trust and who is doing their role, is being honest with you, and is helping you to shepherd the film through. Why is it it's difficult to make a film, it's difficult to edit a film, and often you get through the kind of chaos of the shoot and you think, get into the edit, and director gets in the edit and it's like, right, okay, a bit of peace and quiet. But then things happen and producers get stressed and the money's all spent and deadlines are approaching, and there can be challenges that as an editor you try and kind of push aside so that you can, you and the director can focus on making the best film possible.
No, I think that's vital and such great advice. We can hold on to stuff, directors and producers. We go, oh my God, that was so hard to shoot that day. Oh my God, I got this beautiful reaction from so-and-so. And you hang on to it and you keep it in the movie because something happened massively at the time. But actually it doesn't matter. You get into the edit room and no one else cares what you went through on set. No one else cares how great that shot was or how hard you had to work for it or you had to battle the biggest elements in the world just to get that shot. No one cares. No one cares watching the movie, what you had to go through or the arguments that happened or didn't happen. It doesn't matter. What matters is the story. And it's vital you said that, and so important to that's why directors need to step away for a while and really probably shouldn't edit their own films. Certainly you have to have someone else with you, in my opinion, because there's no way. I'm too close to it. I'm too precious. And that's why I'm like, no, go away for a month or whatever. You come back with your script cut. And then we build from there. Because then you see it with fresh eyes. It's horrible, but you see it. Oh, God. Yeah. So with Walls of War, what's the nice moments where you thought, oh, that really worked for you in terms of, I could edit that nicely, or I could pull on this section or hang on this character a little bit more. Was there any moments you remembered from that?
There was one particular moment that taught me a lesson about filmmaking and about editing and about information. I'm kind of big on this idea of like information and emotion being the two things that that we as filmmakers kind of manipulate. The information in the sense that the audience needs to understand what's going on and who characters are and why someone did this and what have you. And the balance you're trying to get with that is too much information is boring and too little information is confusing, and so you have to find the balance of information. But you can also play about with how you deliver information. And there's a scene in Wolves where there's a Nazi soldier, German soldier, throws a grenade at our heroes. And we had a version of the scene. We were like, that's fine, that's cool. Mm-hmm. And then it went out for notes. And at least a couple of people came back and said, lose the shot of the guy throwing the grenade. Mm-hmm. And we were like, what?
Why? Yeah, why would we need to know where it comes from? Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't make sense. But anyway, we tried it, as you do. And it worked so much better. And on reflection, I realized that the reason this version without the shot of them throwing the grenade was so much stronger is we didn't withhold any information from the audience. We showed a guy throwing a grenade, mm-hmm. but then we had our characters didn't realize and didn't react until several seconds later. So suddenly we were ahead of the audience as a viewer. Whereas the shot, without seeing the guy throw a grenade, you see something fall through the shot and something hit the ground. And it's a World War II film with German soldiers and somebody threw something, so it's probably a grenade. Right. But you're not sure. Mm-hmm. So now there's mystery and there's tension, and you're like, was that a grenade? And then you see it, and the characters see it, and you're like, oh no, shit, it's a grenade. And that was an interesting lesson for me in terms of like, it's very easy to kind of put things in a film and build a scene in a certain way and then look at it and go, yeah, it works fine. Mm-hmm. But that's why it's good to get feedback. It's always good to like figure out how to see stuff from the outside and see it fresh, because I think that was a moment where I thought like, oh yeah, we did an okay version, but actually there's a better version in there. And it took other people to help us find that. But it's, it's one of those kind of little lessons that you kind of took away of like, remember this, don't make sure that you're not just going bum, 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 bum in terms of what happens, because it can, sometimes you can just put too much in, and not obviously so, but put too much in that just kind of makes the audience feel like, I know what's going on here. And, I always feel like you want to just try and be like a tiny bit ahead of the audience, just a tiny bit ahead of the audience. So they're just having to kind of leap to catch up, and, they're filling in kind of gaps and making, mental leaps and that kind of thing. And I think that was one moment where we, by removing that shot, you created a doubt and tension and suspense where you're like, I think that was a grenade, but I don't know.
Yes.
Because it comes down to that thing of like kind of questions. One is it the David Mitchell, the writers, he had a line about how story is a question making machine, and I think that's a really good sort of. I think about that a lot in terms of like, what, when you sit down as a viewer, what is it that grabs you? What is it that makes you want to watch? Those moments where you're kind of like someone else is watching someone on the TV or whatever, and you come in and you're like, what are you watching? And then you have no idea what it is and you don't care what it is, but you end up kind of spending 10 minutes sat on the end of the sofa because you're like, I wonder what's going to happen with so-and-so,
Exactly, yeah.
And I think ideally is, that's a lot of kind of narrative, especially mainstream kind of narrative stuff, like that's what it's doing. It's like it's asking questions and or setting up situations that makes you as a viewer ask questions. And what grabs you is like, I want to find out the answer to the questions. What's going to happen when so and so does this, or what's going to happen when she finds out about that, and what happens when he goes over there? It's all those kind of things that like audiences have a sort of running commentary of questions they're asking. And I think as a filmmaker, it's really useful to tap into that of like, what is a viewer, or what would I do as a viewer be thinking as I'm watching this film? Am I thinking, yeah, it's a grenade, it's a grenade, blah, 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 blah. Mm. Or are we thinking, oh shit, was that a grenade? Obviously you want the latter rather than the former.
Yeah, but isn't it fascinating how we think, we need to see that? And both me and you went, no, of course, that seems silly to take it out. It's fascinating how it totally worked without. It totally worked and so much better. And it was a huge lesson, and it was fascinating. There was a scene in the movie right at the end when he's got the gun, they're about who's going to shoot the kid, who's not. And we've got this moment. And I thought you did brilliantly in building that suspense. And I know I kept pushing. I was like, no, let's hold longer. Let's see how long we can push this. And you did it so brilliantly in really eking out the suspense without it going too far. It's like, will someone get shot or not? How far can we push this? And that's great. And that's what's a great collaboration is just going, okay, cool, I'm going to keep pushing it. It might be too much. All right, let me keep pushing. And eventually you go, yeah, that's it. That's the beat, and that almost like the rubber band effect, isn't it? Keep pulling back. And you've got, like you said, keep your audience on their toes and what is coming next is fascinating. Tips for editors out there. I mean, you've given so many already, actually, in this short space of time.
I'm just a tip machine.
You're just a tip machine. It's like literally you're like a fairground ride where if someone puts a 2p coin in, that's how much of a tip machine you are.
Is that how cheap I am? 2p? Or...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's how much you cost.
Tip, that's
£2 or 2 pence. But yeah.
I guess I'm going to plug something a bit here. So as part of kind of a bit of a lockdown project, I started kind of a website, ended up starting at the beginning of this year about editing. And I kind of felt like I was at the point where I had a lot of stuff I'd learned that I wanted to speak to the me of 10, 15 years ago and kind of put this stuff in one place.
What's the name of it, the website?
It's called The Cutting Room.
Nice.
Cuttingroom.info. And it's just basically a kind of me just putting down all the stuff I've learned from this, that, and the other, and people and work and what have you, into a place that, because I think that people will, a lot of editing stuff online is technical, and I think that, like, yes, editing is a technical job, but it's more of a creative job. And the kind of mantra or whatever of that website is to, like, an editor's job is to make decisions. And ideally, you want to make good decisions or really good decisions. I guess my one kind of overall advice to editors is to think about the decisions you need to make and how you make good ones. And that is like a broad, all-encompassing thing. Like, I'm a big believer that, you should think about what you do and not just do it. I think, a lot of editors talk about like, oh yeah, it's just instinct, you can't teach editing. And I don't think that's true. I think, someone said to me a few years ago, a much more experienced editor, he said, not to big myself up, he said, you clearly got a natural talent for editing. And I was like, I'm not really sure I do. I kind of feel like I've just spent 20 years learning how to do it, like reading stuff and watching stuff and thinking about stuff and editing stuff. And I think that, clearly if you want like anything, if you have like some sort of a natural propensity to it, not necessarily talent, in terms of your personality, because, to sit in a room day after day after day at a computer with the director
in the dark.
I mean, some people just can't do that, you know. You have to have a lot of patience as an editor, you know. And I think that, like, to be a really good editor, you need to learn and understand a lot of things, you know. And I think that to think of yourself as someone who comes in and pushes buttons and moves stuff around, like, is doing yourself and the craft of editing and of filmmaking a disservice. And so I guess I would encourage everyone to, like, I would just think of, like, people like Walter Murch and, you know, who are always, I know he's the one whose name always comes up, and guys like Angus Wall and Kirk Baxter and Pietro Scalia, and like all those guys are, like, usually guys, but there's a lot of, you know, Selma Shoemaker and Dee Allen and Verna Fields and you know, and all those female editors as well. I don't say that to at all dismay. In fact, several of my favorite editors are female editors. Dee Allen especially. His cuts of, like, Dog Day Afternoon, absolutely. I mean, she was a brilliant editor. Anne Courts did Lawrence Arabia. You know, I think there is if I'm honest, I kind of feel like women make better editors than men do.
Right. Okay. Yeah. They make better directors too, but, you know.
I mean, I think women are just generally better than men all around.
Absolutely agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think, like, you know, you read stuff and you see interviews with these people, and they're clearly very smart, but they're clearly also, like, open to influences and talking to people and reading things and watching things and understanding things. And I think the more that you can understand the world, but people especially, I think the better you will become as an editor. And that's certainly what I try to do. It's taken me so far, you know. And I think that, you know, I think that it's easy to think, and I think, especially when a lot of people in the industry, a lot of producers don't really understand what editors do. They diminish, you know, what we do and what role we have, and, you know, and sometimes you end up on a project that, you know, with a producer who clearly thinks that the editors are just shove it all together and, you know, blah blah blah. Like, you know, it's not difficult, you know. So it can be easy just to think that you're, you know, just a small cog in the machine. And I actually think, you know, an editor is, you know, is bigger than that and is more important. That, you know, it's to talk ourselves up a little. It's, you know, everything that's shot comes to us. You know, yes, we sit with the director, but the director doesn't sit there and tell us what to do. You know, sometimes they say do this and do that, and we do it, and sometimes we say, oh, how about we do this or do this other thing. And I think that, you know, you've got to. I think that as an editor, even if no one else values the craft, I think an editor should value the craft of editing and should, you know, push themselves to understand as much as possible, not just about editing, but about all the things that, you know, like psychology, you know, films offer people, like, understanding how people tick and what people are interested in and how people work, you know, in terms of your viewers, but also in terms of the people you work with. You know, I think that's really important. So I guess my kind of general overall, you know, bit of advice to editors would be, you know, don't sell yourself short. You know, you are important to the film, and, you know, and you have a responsibility to the film as well. You know, people hired you to do a job and to do that job well. And in order to do that job well, you know, you have to understand how to tell stories and how to talk to, you know, audiences and how to excite and scare and amuse audiences. And that's not easy. It's not easy. It's not, you know, talking about kind of tense sequences and worlds, you know, cutting for tension is, like, it's an absolute key skill. But it's also really difficult. Like, how long do you hold something? How do you put this bit of information in? Do you put it here? Do you put it there? Do you not put it anywhere? You know, this stuff it's not easy, and that's why it takes so long to edit a film. You know, because a lot of it is trial and error. You know, how are you going to execute the things that you're trying to execute? Amazing, Neil. Thank you so much, man. This has been really cool. That's all right. Just need someone to edit down my rambling now. Yeah, exactly. So, right, we'll do a script cut of your ramblings. Script cut. You need a fine cut, mate. Right, it's going straight into a fine cut. We'll do a director's cut. We did do that. I mean, that last pass we did on Wolves, I think we took out 8 or 9 minutes. We did, yeah. And that wasn't just hacking out big chunks. I mean, that was just literally going through it and being like, do we need this line? Yep. Do we need this shot? And our bonus tip, yep. You know, I think that's a bit that someone gets forgetting, that kind of last stage where you're like, oh, everything's working. Because I think often you will, in a film, you will like work every moment, and that kind of flattens things out a bit. And I think it's really important to go back at the end and just really look at it as a whole and think like, where are we too slow? Yes. Where are we too fast? You know, pace it. And really, that pass really needs to be about just because the film's probably slower than you think it is.
Yeah, always. Yeah. And those little fine cuts were fantastic, weren't they? Just to go through and go hack, chip, 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 chip. And that was amazing. Just go, it still works. And we've cut out 8-9 minutes, and no one will ever know. It's now, those things didn't matter. They weren't important.
I don't know what we cut out.
I don't remember either now, don't remember. Just stuff that was incidental, an extra look or an extra huff or a beat, and often it's just taking off that second or the frame. So just taking off a frame, constantly take off a frame, and actually just to get to the point quicker. No one notices. It just moves the story along. You haven't got that weight of it's another scene, but amazing.
Yeah, the audience are smarter than filmmakers most of the time.
Well, they've seen movies before. They know how they work. They know that someone will be pissed off if they say that line. You don't necessarily need to show them, or if they've been pissed off in the scene before. You get it. You're like, uh-oh. You want that. You don't want to cut straight to them. Build that. So, yeah, so much. Well, thanks, buddy. Enjoy your 72 hours in a row editing marathon. I'm going to go and cut this down into a script edit. Well, Toby will. And, thank you so much for your work on Wolves.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm really a joy to work with you. And, yeah, I hope everyone enjoys your fine cutting skills. All right. Cheers, buddy. Take care.
No problem. Cheers.
Bye. All right, and to wrap this up, let's chat with our composer, Christopher Cook, about composing for movies. Christopher is known for We Go In at Dawn, Code of Silence, and obviously now Wolves of War. And when you watch the movie, hopefully, if you watch the movie, the score is sensational. It's so evocative, and it's really interesting to hear our collaboration about how we work together and how he likes to work with people, where sounds come from for him. Anyway, you'll hear it all. Here it is, my chat with Christopher Cook. How are you, man?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, just busy on other projects and things, and sort of tough deadlines and things like that. But it's a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun on some of these more of these indie films and things. Just sort of just trying out different things. This one's very different to the Wolves of War that we worked on. It's it's a lot more kind of, I guess, like there's a lot more music in it in a way. It's much denser in terms of like the amount of actual notes on the page through the whole thing. Well, figurative page. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with that, and I've been doing some other projects outside of film as well. Writing, I write contemporary music for like sort of contemporary classical music for ensembles and things. So I've got a few projects coming up. I wrote a piece for a brass band, which should hopefully be being performed at some point soon. But it was workshopped a couple of months ago, and it was really fun. It's just like amazing writing for live performers. Like I just get so much out of that.
Oh God, yeah, it must be. Yeah, what is it about writing music for a film or for a live anything really? What is it that you like about it? What is it that made you go, oh God, yeah, this feels amazing? Like you said there, this feels amazing. What is it?
When you're working with live players, it's like the osmosis, and sort of you're getting your ideas like done way better than you could possibly ever imagine them being done. So I think they're sort of two things. I mean, of course, like higher budget productions will have more scope to have like more live players playing your stuff. But yeah, in terms of sort of writing for people, I find that really amazing, really exciting. And, really discovering things that I never knew about writing for an instrument. So like how to make things that I'm writing more effective for a particular instrument. Like that's always really rewarding when you're like one-on-one with someone and understanding what they're doing, basically.
It must be. Did you like study? I mean, you must know so much about so many instruments then, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And I mean, a lot of it is experience working with people, but there are the books you have to study, which can be a bit boring, but it kind of has to be done. But that only gets you to a certain level. Like you can't go beyond that until you're actually interacting with people and you're really like working closely with someone. I'm actually still kind of studying actually, because I'm at the Royal Northern College of Music. So I'm still sort of doing work like kind of contemporary music. It's what allows me to get all these performances and things at this stage of my career. So
it's amazing that you say at this stage of your career, and yet, you know, you've already had a great career, you know, in terms of making films and composing for films, and yet you're still studying. And it's a huge testament to you, the fact that you're still studying and you've got all these great credits behind you already, right? I mean, that says it's going to be a good career for you, right?
Well, I think like you can't like rest. Like I always think I have to be learning. I have to be like improving myself, because like, well, that's very kind of you to say. Yeah, but I always feel like I'm not there yet. I don't think I'll ever feel I'm there yet, but it's just like sort of continual development, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think any of us ever feel like we're there yet. I imagine, or maybe Spielberg does, but even then he thinks, no, I still want to do this, or I've got that to do, you know? So I don't think it ever stops.
Absolutely. I mean, like John Williams, for example, like he's
right.
He's what, 94 or something? Or no, what is he? No, he's 92. But like,
sure,
he's young. It's okay. But he's still like, you know, he's writing the new Indiana Jones film score at like 92, and just like, it's insane that he's still like trying to do that stuff. And I know he from interviews I've seen with him, that he's still very self-critical, and he's like, you know, he's always writing every day. He writes, I think someone said that he writes 2 minutes of music every day, fully written out music every day, whether he's on a project or not. So
wow,
it's, you know, it's a testament to like his like determination. It's sort of something that really inspires me to sort of keep writing, because like if you can be like in your 90s and still writing stuff like that, he must be doing something right.
Yeah, he must be. And then you think, well, why don't I do that? And that's a really good lesson for filmmakers out there, and for anyone who wants to get into this business, is you've got to practice. Even at 92, 93, he's still practicing and trying to get better at his craft, or trying to find a new sound, and the reason why that works as well is because then when you suddenly put under the cosh, you know, you get put to the test, right, we've got 4 weeks, you've got to write this whole score for this film. It's not like, oh my God, I haven't done this for a few weeks. Oh my God, I haven't, you know, it's you're doing it every day anyway. It's like, yeah, cool, no worries, I'll just crack on with it. How did you find like being approached? You know, you did We Go In at Dawn, war film, and then you did Code of Silence as well, right? So, and then coming on to Wolves of War. How did it feel when you sort of went, oh, okay, I'm moving into film, I'm moving into that direction? And how did you approach it? And how do you approach it, I suppose?
How do I approach it? I mean, it's a very broad question.
Sure. I like that. I'm good at broad.
Well, I mean, every project is different, as you know. I mean, it's sort of, I mean, the Code of Silence was very different to these war films that I've been doing, in terms of language, in terms of the whole approach. I mean, in that one, I actually had a drummer and a guitarist, you know, record some stuff for me for that. So that was sort of a different process. And there was a long period of I had like several kind of little tracks, and I just sort of cut them up and sort of did a lot of manipulation with it. So there was a lot of work that went on in the kind of sound design aspect of the film to sort of make everything flow and feel cohesive. Whereas the war films, they were more sort of working with traditional instrumentation and sort of, I guess, getting inspiration from several things. I mean, I remember with Wolves, one of the early things you sent me was Hacksaw Ridge, Rupert Gregson Williams. I got quite a lot from that score, just having a real listen, seeing what he'd actually done with you know, getting the heart of the emotion out of it, but then also still feeling big and epic and like a sort of, you know, epic kind of war film kind of feel to it. So yeah, I mean, it's varies quite a lot between projects, but yeah, I think my kind of way of doing it is I always try and come up with a few themes before I start. So I have to have like character themes. So I wrote Martha's theme for Wolves of War. Mm-hmm. That was like one of the first things I wrote and sent you. And then that sort of was the kind of seed that allowed me to sort of expand the rest of the score.
Yes.
I think with all these projects, if you've got a blank sheet of paper, you're never going to be able to do anything. So you just have to just get something out like whatever it is, whether it's bad or good, whatever, like just something, and then you can always just build on it.
I love that. Same as writing the screenplay. Just get it out, get it finished, get it to a place where you can go, all right, now it's an actual beginning, middle, and end type story, and then you can come back. And it's interesting you approach things the same way, because I just sort of say to you, oh, okay, I'd like it to be like Hacksaw Ridge, or I'd like it to be like, whatever movie. I'm chucking stuff at you. I was chucking quite a few sort of films that I felt fit the mold. How does that feel then as a composer, and what do you like to get? Does that help you? Maybe like chucking Hacksaw Ridge at you and other things, does that go, okay, he wants or she wants that kind of vibe?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the sort of initial points of inspiration, I think it's really important to have, like, for a director or someone to give you something which is in the realms of what they want.
Yeah.
I think where it becomes tricky is when a whole film is temped out, so it's got a full temp score, and then director is like, oh, I want it exactly like that. But
yes,
it kind of needs to be a creative process for me as well, to be able to sort of get to that point of creating the music that fits the scene. So I think, like, for me, I work best when I've got like something to expand upon that's like an initial point of inspiration for me.
So it does help. Okay, that's good.
It does help a lot. Yeah.
How do you then go, okay, how do I find my own source? Like with Martha's theme, like you wrote for me and I was like, oh, this is really fantastic. How is it you get there? How is it you go, okay, well, do you take ideas from the script, from what I've told you, from what goes through your mind, do you think?
Well, writing music for me is kind of, I kind of work in a way of improvisation. Improvisation is sort of my way of getting things out. So it's really hard for me to pinpoint exactly where a theme has come from in terms of like actually where the notes have actually come from in the score. But it's sort of, it's a general feeling inside me, which I get when either I'm reading a script or you sent me the shots from the shoot. Like even that was really useful and sort of gave me something to sort of build upon. Yeah, I don't really know like how to sort of describe how to write a theme. It's quite a mystical process to me. Like I just don't know it.
Really? It's even to you? Because obviously, because it comes out of you, this sort of emotion. I suppose it's like asking a screenwriter, I suppose, how do you get that? But with a screenwriter, sometimes you can sit and go, okay, well, this is the story I want to tell. I want to go from this point and here's my beats. But you're saying you don't do that. You just sort of organically go, okay, this feels right. With Martha's theme, for example, the character seems to be, lost or they're afraid. So you just sort of feeling that out as you sort of find it, because that's magical if so.
Yeah, I suppose it is. I mean, there are other things as well which can affect it. When you're watching the film, sometimes, and this has happened on a few occasions, I've been sort of listening to the dialogue of an actor and sort of hearing the cadence of their voice or the kind of, I guess, like timbre, even of their voice. And that's often given me like language to work with. So maybe if they speak in a certain way, it sort of gives me something. And it's kind of funny. It seems kind of silly. Like it's almost like, onomatopoeic in a way or something. Like it's just taking their like actual sound of their voice and translating it somehow. That's also fun as well. That sometimes works.
Yeah. Well, what happens? All right. Well, that's like you're saying there. Sometimes it works. What happens when you feel like it's not working? How do you get over that to make it work?
Well, I think that kind of happens with everything I do. I'm always like that.
Okay.
So, if we were still working on Wolves of War, I'd still be working on it. I'd still be changing things.
Right.
Up till now.
We probably all would, right? I'd still be in the edit. I'd still be going, no, I want to tweak this. Let's go reshoot that, right? I think, but it has to be that point where you go, I've got to stop now. I have to just trust.
That's what deadlines are for. I mean,
right.
Literally.
Because you can't do any more. And on Wolves, it was a tight deadline. It was like, look, we have to deliver now. This is what we've got. And even then, I still asked you to change something last minute, which is which was naughty of me. But at the same time, I needed it. It was like I needed that. When you get to the point of, oh God, this is it, final now. I just wanted that little bit done, and it was nothing you'd done wrong. It was just something I'd seen or wanted different.
Yeah, absolutely.
For other composers out there, are people sort of listening to this, or directors going, okay, how do I work with a composer? What is it you like about working with a director or producer, to get out what they're asking for? What works?
What works is like a lot of communication, basically. And I think what's difficult is when a director is like changing where they're going with the film. I mean, if you send them a load of stuff and they say, oh, I like this, and then suddenly there's a left turn and they're like, oh no, we're going to do everything different. It's like all that development that the composer's done before that is kind of lost, and they're like, in the wilderness, basically. That's probably the most worrying stage to be in. And that's why it's really important, the communication, I'd say. Like, it's just like, you've always got to be on it with the director. Because there's like, I get anxious just thinking about it, just like getting to an end of a project and like submitting everything. And then, the director might not like everything I've done so far.
Yes.
And then what? Then what do I do? Like, it's like a lot of work. Like, it's almost impossible to go and change everything at that point.
Yeah. Then you've got to change it and redo everything. Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember sending you quite a lot of examples, and we going backwards and forwards on the score. And I play the piano a bit, so I feel I'm quite musical, but compared to a composer, I'm nowhere near musical. But I at least kind of know what I want. I know what I feel, and I'll often listen to music when I write or when I'm developing the project I'm about to direct. I'm like, what is this telling? What's the mood of this? So I think that helps me when, speaking to you and saying, okay, this is what I'd like from this. So yeah, I really liked our collaboration. I really loved what you delivered. And it's funny how I find composers or editors can just sort of get what you want. But it must be really confusing and annoying when, like I say, you're not really getting like, just you've seen it, go make it work. You're like, okay, well, I need a steer in some way. Does it help if someone's really musical, like really almost to the T? No, I need you to just go up an octave here, or a note here, want that string a little bit longer. Is that too hands-on, almost paint by numbers?
Yeah, I think you need to be like directors. Like, I think if they're too involved in like, I want this, if they say that, the worst thing a director can say is like, I want this minor, and you're like, what do you mean minor? Like that could mean anything. Like what do you mean? Do you mean more sad? I think like really good feedback from directors is when they're like, your feedback was great because it was like, oh, point up the gun, for instance. And I was like, oh, that's what that means. Okay, yeah, all right. So we'll build into that and like make sure that's like highlighted. And I think like that kind of feedback is really useful. But if it's like getting into the territory of musically, I remember there were a couple of things that you said, like you said you wanted an oboe at one point. You wanted like, there were certain musical devices that you wanted to do, and that's kind of fine. And I think that's actually really helpful because it sort of helps with the language. But when it's like, really minutiae of sort of things, it's like, I can't do that because it's like, I have to change the way I'm thinking. But then again, I mean, as a composer, we're not always necessarily seeing the full picture. And sometimes like we may question a change, but actually it may be serving something that we're not aware of, basically, like in the director's vision, I guess.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. How do you feel about Walls of War now? After what is maybe 6 months since we finished post? I can't remember now. Certainly since you finished your side of it. How do you feel now, looking back and going, okay, this is where we're at, and that's the finished piece. It's out there in the world.
Well, for one thing, I'd say it's not mine anymore, and honestly, like I would probably feel like I've kind of moved on, or I would want to try and do something different or explore somewhere different in the way I would tell the story. I think there are things which I would definitely improve. I would want to use a little bit more live cello if possible. I would probably want to change some of there were like loads of things which I would change, like mixing and all sorts of things like that. But I was quite happy with the overall shape of it. I think it's musically cohesive, and that was the thing I was going for from the beginning, like sort of making sure that it's this theme that's carried through the whole film. And I'm happy with it as a thing, but of course, like, we would just change things forever if we could.
Exactly. No, and I thought you did a brilliant job, so thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. Final bit of advice for composers coming up then. I know you're coming up and you still feel like you're new, but what would you advice that you would give to someone to try and get a job like you did on a couple of features straight away?
Well, I think the way I got features was basically I just put stuff out there and kept like writing music and uploading music and doing competitions and things like that. And basically making friends with people as well is also really, really important. So I'd say that's like how I was able to get into this, basically. In terms of advice, I'd say make friends with your sound designer, because that's like absolutely key, because they have control over your music. They have like everything. And if you can integrate with what they're doing, then it's gonna work, basically.
Amazing. Thank you so much, man. It's been really cool, and congratulations. You should be very proud.
Oh, thank you.
So there you have it. That is our Wolves of War special. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it's inspired you to go out there and make your movies. And remember, if you are lucky enough to rise up and do well, it is your duty to send the elevator back down. We will see you next Tuesday as always. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your support. Bye for now. Bye.